Hello, I'm Brad Balliett. I'm a composer, a bassoon player, a teaching artist, and an alumni of Ensemble Connect. I'm here today to talk a little bit about giving your audience an entry point into the work they are about to hear, and then we'll explore a couple of different ways to introduce a single piece of music. As you watch these introductions, keep in mind that there are virtually unlimited entry points for any given piece of music, and virtually unlimited ways to introduce a piece. The question is always, what is exciting to me as an artist in this work of art right now? And what do I want to share with my audience? The answers to these questions could change based on your developing relationship with the piece, the audience you have in front of you, or even your mood on the day of the concert. I have a brief 3-minute piece of music to share with you for my instrument, the bassoon. I'd like to offer you 3 different viable ways that I might introduce this piece, each time followed by a performance of the piece. As you watch these introductions and the piece each time, consider the following questions. What entry point do you think I have in mind? How does focusing on that entry point affect your experience of hearing the piece? And finally, for what audience might this specific introduction be most appropriate? Let's go. Hello, my name is Brad, and I love long walks through the forest. That may sound like the opening of a personal ad, but it's not. It's just a fact. And one of my favorite things to do is to explore a forest over several visits, to really get to know it well, and to go a little bit further into the forest each time I visit. Of course, that means as I start going down the trail, that there are certain parts of the forest that I see a lot, almost every day, but my experience of those parts of the trail are a little different each time I go back. And then I'll go a little further and a little further until I feel like I've really gotten to know this section of woods. The piece I'm about to play for you, which I wrote back in September 2020 when I was spending a lot of time in the forest, is kind of set up in this same way. I have a melody for my instrument, the bassoon, that I play over and over again, much like walking the trail. But each time I play this melody, it sounds a little different, and it goes a little bit further and wanders a little further into brand new places until it becomes almost lost in a forest of sound. Hi there, my name is Brad and I play the bassoon. The bassoon is a kind of unusual instrument, and to be honest, there's not so many solo pieces written for it, not nearly as many as there are for, say, violin or piano. When I was young, I admit I was a little bit jealous of those instruments, and sometimes even said to myself, I wish I played a different instrument. Not only was I jealous of all the great pieces written for it, but of the sound as well. I wanted the bassoon to be more like the piano, playing chords and lots of different notes. I wanted the bassoon to be like an electric guitar and thrill my audiences with volume and power. And I wanted my bassoon to be a drum set and make people dance. The bassoon is not any of those instruments, and frankly, it never will be. But I felt better when I started exploring ways to change the sound and break away from the kind of normal ways of playing. And I've tried to do that in the piece that I'm about to play for you now, which I wrote in September of 2020. As I play this piece, listen not only for unusual sounds from the bassoon, but moments in which the bassoon seems like it's trying to escape its own sound and become another instrument altogether. Hello, my name is Brad, and I have been mulling over a question. Have you ever heard a sound? Not necessarily the sound of music, but anything you hear out in the world, and found it really striking and wanted to find a way to either sing that sound or play it on an instrument that you play? What was that sound, and how would you sing it? Or how would you play it on an instrument? I'd love to hear all of you using your voices or your instruments to kind of translate that sound that you have in mind into music. As a composer and as a bassoon player, this is something that I think about a lot because it's where I get a lot of my inspiration when I write music. Let me give you an example. This summer, I spent a lot of time outside listening to birds. And there was one bird that totally blew me away by its creativity and the huge range of sounds that it could make. That bird was called the brown thrasher. It's a bird that looks like this, and it sounds like this. So I wanted to learn the brown thrasher song on my instrument, the bassoon. So I slowed it down until the sound was much lower into the range of the bassoon. That sounded like this. Then I learned the song on bassoon and added some of my own ideas and personality in with it. And by the time I had finished working it out, I had a piece of music. I'd like to play that piece of music for you now, including some of the videos I took of the brown thrasher as I was watching it this summer. As I play this piece, you might consider the question of, is this music or is it sound? And why? Thank you for watching all of these introductions with me, and I hope that it was helpful in helping you find an entry point for a piece you may be performing and consider ways of introducing a piece for various audiences. Let's review for a second. The first introduction that I did presented an image of a path through the forest in which each day I walked a little further down that path. The entry point that I had in mind to which to direct my audience's focus was form, because the form of the piece is a melody which repeats over and over but goes a little further each time, just like that image of going a little further down the trail in a forest. The second introduction talked about the sound of the bassoon itself and my efforts to explore ways to change and expand that sound. My entry point here was timbre, or tone color. The last introduction talked about my direct inspiration and method of composing this piece. Here, the entry point is a little less pointed, but leaves room for the audience to ponder some questions. What does it mean to transcribe sound for one's voice or one's instrument? And is the result music? And if so, why? You might think about which of these introductions was most effective for you and why, and what kind of introduction you personally are drawn to giving. The main thing to think about is that the more genuine you are, the more your audience will respond to what you're saying and go with you. Each of the introductions that I gave you for this piece of music I think are perfectly viable and intros that I would happily give at a concert depending on my audience. And they could also be changed or edited depending on that audience. For instance, if I was playing for young people, or maybe even adults, that last introduction might be even more fun if the audience had a chance to imitate their own favorite nature sounds for me to try out on bassoon and make our own new solo piece for bassoon before we heard the one that I wrote. By carefully considering your own relationship with the work of art as well as the audience that will be hearing it, you can craft a specific, tailored listening experience, one that could even be transformative.